snow fell slowly, in large, quiet flakes, covering the mountains and pine forests like a downy blanket. In a small cabin, deep in the mountains, the faint light of a candle barely dispelled the gloom. Inside sat an old man named Isaac. His hands, rough and gnarled from decades of working with wood and earth, trembled as he tried to light his pipe. His eyes were empty, like an abandoned well. He was 68 years old, but he looked 80. A beard as white as snow covered most of his emaciated face, and wrinkles, like cracks in old clay, lined his skin. Isaac was a recluse. After the death of his wife, Evelyn, and his only daughter, Sarah, he went into the mountains to escape the pain that every corner of his former life brought. His cabin was the only thing left. He had built it himself, when he was young, when it seemed he had an eternity ahead of him. Now, this cabin was just a tomb of his memories. Isaac used to be a strong man. He was respected. He never spoke of his feelings, and even when his wife died, he held back his tears. He believed a man should be strong, but the death of his daughter, who died very young, finally broke him. She died of a fever, far from home, in a big city where she had gone to find a better life. Isaac never forgave her for it. He believed she had betrayed him, their family, and their simple, honest way of life. On one of the coldest winter days, when the blizzard howled so fiercely it seemed the mountains themselves groaned, Isaac heard a knock at the door. He slowly raised his head. No one knew where his cabin was. It was simply impossible. He took the old rifle that stood in the corner and, limping, went to the door. On the threshold stood a young man. He was no older than 30. His face was pale, his hair covered in frost, and his lips blue from the cold. But in his eyes burned a fire that did not match his emaciated appearance. He was dressed in warm but tattered clothes, and a tool bag hung over his shoulder. His name was Caleb. "Sir, I beg your pardon," he croaked. "In Caleb, I would have fixed your well, but I didn't make it." Isaac sized him up. He saw in him not just a traveler, but a man desperately in need of help. But his heart had long been sealed, and he was about to slam the door shut. Caleb raised his hand. "I am not asking for anything. Just let me rest a little. I'll pay. I was working at Blackwood's ranch. They sent me to fix, but I got lost when this blizzard started." The name Blackwood was known to Isaac. He was a rich, but cruel man. Isaac knew Caleb wasn't lying, but he couldn't let him in. It would be a betrayal of his own pain. Isaac looked at him, and a spark of anger flashed in his eyes. He remembered how his daughter left to find a better life, only to find death. He saw in Caleb one who also sought a better lot, and this stirred in him deep pain and anger.
I ask you to like and subscribe to the channel, so you will help me in motivation to make such great stories for you, and I will see that you like them. Enjoy watching, everyone.
Isaac wanted to say go away, but his voice caught in his throat. He looked at Caleb, who didn't move, and noticed how blue his lips were. "Come in," he croaked, but only for the night. Caleb entered. He was exhausted. He could barely stand. He took off his frost-covered clothes. Isaac tossed him a blanket, and Caleb, without a word, wrapped himself in it and sat by the fire. He looked at the fire, and some kind of pain was visible in his eyes. Pain. Isaac couldn't take his eyes off him. He saw that pain in his own eyes every day when he looked in the mirror. It was the pain of loneliness, lost time, and shattered hopes. The next day Isaac woke up. Caleb was already awake. He was sitting by the fire, drawing something on a piece of paper. He turned and smiled. "Thank you, sir," he said. "I'll never forget your kindness." Isaac said nothing. He just looked at him. There was something about Caleb that surprised him, something that bothered him. He felt that this young man wasn't just fixing wells, but looking for something he needed. "What are you looking for?" Isaac asked. Caleb smiled. "I'm looking for someone who will understand me. I'm looking for my father. He went into the mountains many years ago. Said he'd find gold here. I'm looking for him to tell him I've forgiven him." Isaac froze. He looked at Caleb and couldn't believe his ears. This young man, despite all his pain, was looking for forgiveness. This was something Isaac had never been able to do. He had never forgiven his daughter. "You won't find him," Isaac said. "The mountains don't forgive. They take everything. Your father isn't here." Caleb looked at him. There was no malice in his eyes, only sadness. "You don't know," he said softly. "I feel he's somewhere here. I feel he's waiting for me. I have to find him." Isaac couldn't understand. He couldn't understand why this young man was so obsessed with finding his father. He saw himself in his youth, when he too was looking for his place in life. But he had never been like Caleb. He had never been so weak, and it evoked compassion in him. He himself was strong. He was taught that one should not be weak. But now he understood that Caleb was not weak. He was strong, but in his own way. He was a man who was not afraid to show his pain. Isaac realized that he also wanted forgiveness. He wanted to forgive his daughter, and he wanted this young man to find his father. He realized that their destinies were intertwined. "All right," Isaac said, "I'll help you. I know these mountains like the back of my hand. I can help you find him." Caleb looked at him, and hope flared in his eyes. He smiled. It was a smile that made the old rancher, Isaac, feel something he hadn't felt in a very long time. Hope that his life could have meaning. Isaac and Caleb set out the next morning, even before dawn. The mountains met them with stern silence. Only the crunch of snow underfoot broke the quiet. Caleb, despite his youth, was full of determination, but his inexperience was evident in everything he did. Isaac, in contrast, moved with the confidence of a mountain wolf, his old eyes noticing every detail: a broken branch, an animal track, the direction of the wind. He led Caleb along trails known only to him, past sheer cliffs and deep gorges. The cold was piercing, and the journey was exhausting. Days blurred into weeks. They found old campfires, forgotten traps, even abandoned mines where prospectors once tried their luck. Each new discovery first instilled a flash of hope in Caleb, but then invariably led to disappointment. Nothing that could directly point to his father. "He could have left," Isaac said hoarsely one evening, as they sat by a dim fire, sharing the last of their dried meat. "Many come here for gold, only to find cold and loneliness." Caleb's eyes dimmed. Despair slowly but surely began to take hold of him. He imagined his father as strong and full of life, but the mountains seemed to mock his hopes. He smiled less often. His shoulders slumped. He began to doubt whether these searches were worth the effort. "No," Caleb whispered, staring into the fire. "I feel he's somewhere here. He couldn't just disappear. I have to find him. I have to tell him I've forgiven him." Isaac nodded understandingly. He saw himself in Caleb, but younger, more naive. He remembered how he, too, once stubbornly searched for answers, only then it was his daughter, Sarah, and he wanted to understand why she had left him. He never found answers, and that feeling of guilt and unforgiveness weighed heavily on him. He realized that his own pain from the loss of his daughter was as strong as Caleb's despair, and this deeply rooted pain prevented him from truly living, just as the mountains concealed Caleb's father. One day, they stumbled upon an abandoned cabin, as old and dilapidated as their own hopes. Inside, on a dusty table, they found several wooden animal figurines. Caleb snatched them up, his eyes wide. These are my father's work," he exclaimed, a long-awaited hope resounding in his voice. "He always carved such figurines." "I knew it." Isaac carefully examined the figurines. He saw a mark on them, like a small cross. It was familiar. Once, many years ago, his own daughter, Sarah, who loved the forest and nature, often brought him similar figurines, saying they were carved by an old hunter living somewhere high in the mountains. Isaac's heart clenched. He felt that the truth was near, but it would be painful. Suddenly, Caleb noticed an old, faded map on the wall. It was crudely drawn, but it marked places with gold deposits. Next to one such place, among the most dangerous peaks, a small cross was drawn exactly like the one on the figurines. Caleb sharply turned to Isaac, shock evident in his eyes. "This is the map. This is my father's map." Caleb trembled. "But why is there a cross here?" Isaac didn't know what to say. He looked at the map, then at Caleb, and an internal conflict ignited within him. He felt that the solution was close, but it could bring even more pain. Isaac couldn't accept it. He felt on the verge, as if his old wounds had reopened. He felt despair, for if Caleb's father was indeed that hunter, then he knew about Sarah. And if he knew, why didn't he help? Why did his daughter die alone? And why did he, Isaac, so blindly overlook such simple things? He couldn't understand. It was too painful. Isaac stood, leaning against the wall of the dilapidated cabin, his gaze fixed on the map. The cross, the very cross he had seen on the figurine Sarah had brought. His heart clenched with such pain that it felt as if the mountains had collapsed directly on him. He remembered. Everything flooded back into his memory, like a muddy river overflowing its banks. Sarah, his Sarah, she loved to carve wood so much, and the mysterious hunter who taught her, Isaac had always neglected her hobbies, considering them childish whims, not serious enough for the harsh life in the mountains. He had always wanted her to be strong, like him, not to seek easy paths. But she left to find herself, and he never forgave her. Never. Caleb approached him, his voice trembling. "What does this mean, sir? Why this cross? Why are you looking like that?" Isaac didn't hear him. His mind was in the past. He saw Sarah, her bright hair, her laughter. In recent years, he had tried not to think of her, so as not to feel that suffocating pain. He had convinced himself that she had betrayed him, that she had left for an illusory dream. But now, looking at this cross, at this map, he began to understand. Sarah had never betrayed him. She was just looking for her path, her passion. And he, her father, was too blind in his pride and bitterness to understand it. He had rejected her when she needed his understanding. He didn't want to see her grow, to see her change. He wanted her to remain his little girl, obedient and predictable. And that was his biggest mistake. His eyes welled up. Tears streamed down his wrinkled face. Hot, burning, like lava erupting from a long-extinct volcano. He, Isaac Kane, the stern mountain man who hadn't cried even at his wife's funeral, was now sobbing. He was sobbing not only for Sarah, but also for his lost wisdom, for the years spent in blind hatred and unforgiveness. He realized that he had cursed his daughter, not knowing the truth. He was too consumed by his pain to understand her. He was guilty of his hatred. "Your father," Isaac croaked, barely holding back his sobs. "Is his name Jedediah? He was the hunter who taught my Sarah to carve figurines. She loved his lessons, and I didn't understand. I thought she was just wasting time." Caleb froze. "Jedediah, that's my father. You knew him? You knew Sarah?" Isaac nodded, his head bowed heavily. "Sarah, my daughter, she died. I blamed her for leaving. I thought she abandoned me, but she was just looking for herself, and I didn't forgive her." He looked up at Caleb, his eyes filled with unbearable despair and guilt. "And your father, he was looking for himself too. He was looking for gold. But he was different. He was a good man. He is not to blame for her death." He told Caleb everything he knew about Sarah and the hunter, about how his daughter spoke of this man's kindness, of his wood-carving lessons. Isaac remembered how Sarah enthusiastically showed him another figurine carved by her teacher, and how Isaac brushed it off, preoccupied with his own affairs. Now these memories burned his soul. His realization was astounding. His own rigidity, his inability to understand and accept his daughter's choice, had led 2 years of agonizing grief, while the truth was nearby, hidden behind his own prejudices. He was so consumed by his hatred that he couldn't see love. And now, he felt immense pain. Caleb listened, his eyes filling with tears. He understood that his father, Jedediah, was not just a gold prospector, but a man who was also looking for something. Perhaps he was looking not only for gold, but for forgiveness, for meaning. He understood that his father, Jedediah, was that very hunter, and this gave him insight into his father's motives. He had not abandoned him. He had simply gotten lost in the mountains. At that moment, as the snow outside intensified, Isaac raised his head. "I know where to look for him. He is not dead. He is alive. I feel it. We will find him." New hope, pure and strong as a mountain stream, rang in his voice. He realized that this was his chance to atone for his guilt, help Caleb, and finally find his own peace. He understood that only through helping another, through acceptance and forgiveness, could he find peace. This was his epiphany, and it gave him the strength to move forward. The year 1880. Wyoming. With new hope in their hearts, Isaac and Caleb moved on, deep into the very heart of the mountains. The cold became even more piercing, and the snowdrifts higher, but Isaac's movements regained their former confidence. He was no longer a weary old man wandering in his own grief. His eyes burned, and every step was purposeful. Caleb, inspired by his determination, followed him, trusting the old man completely. They overcame icy passes, descended into snow-covered gorges where the wind howled like a wild beast. Isaac told stories about the mountains, about animals, about his life before losing Sarah, and Caleb listened, feeling not just understanding grow between them, but a true connection. Finally, after long and exhausting days of travel, they saw smoke in the distance. It was a tiny, almost invisible cabin, nestled against a rock. Hope flared like a bright flame, searing their hearts. They quickened their pace, forgetting fatigue and cold. As they got closer, Isaac smelled a familiar scent, campfire smoke mixed with the smell of pine resin. He recognized it. It was the same scent Sarah brought with her when she returned from her carving lessons. The cabin door was ajar. Isaac gently pushed it open. Inside, by a small hearth, sat an old, emaciated man. His hair and beard were matted, and his face was carved with deep wrinkles, but in his eyes, when he looked up, a faint spark of life still burned. On his lap lay unfinished but recognizable wooden animal figurines. This was Jedediah, Caleb's father. "Father," Caleb gasped, rushing to him. His voice was full of relief and love. Jedediah looked up at him with cloudy eyes, then his eyes widened in surprise. He couldn't believe his eyes. His son, after so many years. "Caleb, my son," he whispered, and tears streamed down his face. Caleb hugged him, pressing against his emaciated body. "I found you, Father. I came to tell you that I forgive you." This scene pierced Isaac's heart. He watched them, and his own tears flowed uncontrollably. He remembered how his Sarah had once hugged him in the same way, and how he, in his blind pride, had pushed her away. Now he felt a deep reconciliation not only between Caleb and Jedediah, but within himself. He forgave Sarah. He forgave himself for his inability to understand her. He realized that love and forgiveness were far stronger than any pain. Jedediah, weakened by years of solitude but now having found new meaning, told them his story. He had come to the mountains to find gold, to provide Caleb with a better life, but the mountains wouldn't let him go. He got lost in his obsession, seeking wealth that could never replace his family. He confessed that he had seen Sarah when she lived in the mountains and tried to help her, but the illness proved stronger. He felt guilty for not being able to save her, and that feeling had haunted him all these years. He thought he had lost everything. Isaac walked up to him. I know Sarah. She was my daughter. You are not to blame. We all lose our way, but the main thing is to find our way back." They spent several days in a cabin, helping Jedediah regain his strength. Isaac and Caleb took care of him, brought him food, shared the warmth of their fire. Jedediah, seeing this, slowly began to come back to life. He told stories about the mountains, about gold, about his dreams. Caleb listened, and genuine love shone in his eyes. Finally, the three of them set off back to Isaac's cabin. The journey was long, but now it felt light. The snow had stopped falling, and the sun, bright and warm, illuminated their path. Isaac, Caleb, and Jedediah returned to the ranch, but they were different people now. Isaac rediscovered the joy of life. Caleb found his father, and Jedediah found forgiveness and a new family. The ranch was filled with life once again. They worked together, shared stories, laughed. This union of three lost souls, who found each other in the mountains, became a symbol that even after the heaviest losses, one can find new meaning and happiness. Conclusion and lesson. This story of the Wild West, full of harsh trials, teaches us an important truth. The pain of loss can harden the heart, make us withdraw into ourselves and push away those who try to reach us. Isaac, having lost his daughter, allowed hatred and guilt to blind him. But the meeting with Caleb, whose sincere faith in forgiveness and search for his father, helped him journey from deep despair to epiphany and reconciliation. In the modern world, where there are so many losses, where people often retreat into their pain, our story reminds us, true strength is not in not crying or not showing weakness, but in the ability to forgive both others and ourselves. It is important to remember that every person, even the strongest and most independent, needs family, love, and understanding. And the meaning of life is often not in what we seek, but in what we find when we open our hearts to others. Forgiveness, wisdom, and love, that is what truly makes us stronger, connecting the past, present, and future.